Check, check.
Yep.
Nice.
Karen, do I have about 20 minutes?
Yes.
Ready, go. I'm starting a clock. I know you know that I like to freestyle it. This is our fourth time presenting to you here at Yucca Valley Center for Spiritual Living. My name is Kim Tang, and my life partner is Spencer Larson, and we have a place walking distance called Yucca Shala, which is a small private event center for the healing arts and spiritual sciences. And it has been our greatest pleasure to support this community. And the names are just flying through my mind with Karen and Werner and Joe. Thank you, Joe. Doria, who's actually with us in spirit. Daryl, her father, on and on. Elvira, nice to meet you. Otter, thank you for the blessing, and so on and so on and so on. So it's our pleasure to serve the community, but let's be clear, you are the community. You are the community that we are here to serve. And have you heard this community growing? Karen just announced 5, 6, or 7 people who are stepping up to serve this community. So let's spread this word far and wide. The energy that I have in this moment is that this room is full. Can you see it? With people that are all on the path and want to know how to be, through presence and being, a higher way of being. So my talk today is more like an introduction to the guides and to the course called Of Source that Spencer and I together will be offering here in person, but also online in support of actually humanity. Community, you, humanity, all of it, every bit of it. So with that, let me begin. Love and gratitude. I am called to say that my deepest gratitude in this moment is for the presence and being of my beloved Ewan, who just played the music for us. What a pleasure, what a privilege, what a blessing to be called mother to this extraordinary human being. I love you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Yep. And thank you, Randall. And Wade, didn't meet you yet, just for being here in support primarily of Ewan, who's doing the music today. Okay. So let me go on. Did you know that the very first song I ever learned on the piano was Let There Be Peace on Earth? 5, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that might be about as much as I remember. I was hoping you don't call me out, but I could probably hash it out with one finger pretty quick. But you know, if you've heard me speak before, that when I was 11 years old, I had a stepfather who was a Science of Mind minister. And I took the first 2 years to become a Science of Mind minister when I was 11 years old. Like, what? I've always been on the path. And there were some detours along the way, but of course, there are no detours, are there? Right? Every moment is the life, self-cultivated and custom curated for what you've chosen to learn through. Now, as fate would have it, and I think as you saw on the screen, I reconnected with myself through the path of yoga, right? And so, I don't even want to go there because we're not teaching yoga, except that yoga is life. And yoga, through Hatha yoga, the practice of yoga, using the body as a learning device for the mind, I came to the realization of all 8 limbs of yoga, which is the journey through the self to the self with spiritual study and self-study. And so, for myself, I took up a spiritual path for myself. And I studied quite a bit. I don't just mean study, I embodied what I studied quite a bit. And so Joe named a bunch of those sources that I put on, a super quick bio, but there's more, and there's more, and there's more, and there's more. And the reason that I'm telling you this is because Spencer and I are offering a course here on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m., and it'll last for about an hour and a half. And this, let me be very clear, this is not a book club. This is a course with a call for action. Practice leads to integration. Full integration is embodiment of a higher way of being and seeing. So let me just hash out my notes real quick because there's some things that I want to cover in the time that I have. Let there be peace on earth, right? 5, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7. And by the way, Otter how does the infinite restore and repair? Right? Everything that everyone has already contributed, all of the wisdom, is all combined, not combined, it's comprehensive and full-bodied in the nature of the course that we're offering. So we all can agree that we want peace on earth. It's literally the theme song, if you will, of First Church of Religious Science, Science of the Mind, the teaching of Ernest Holmes. It's the song that we sing at the end of every sermon. We hold hands and sing it. We all want it. We all agree to it. But how? How can there be peace on earth? It's crazy madness. And by the way, how did it ever come to be such crazy madness? So much discord. And in fact, is there any part that we as individuals play in the discord? Because that's not what we want, is it? We've agreed we want peace. So how did it happen? What part do we play? How does the infinite restore harmony? That's what we want to talk about. Not just talk about. Teach, practice, integrate, and embody. So, knowing a higher way of actually being that will elevate the conscious collective. I've come to know through my spiritual study and self-study that most of spirituality is what I'm going to call accountability and also letting go of things. You say, but letting go of what? Ooh, there's a lot to unpack there. So I'll call in some references of, I kind of tell you every time I get up here, that one of the most viewed TED Talks on YouTube is by Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, called My Stroke of Insight. And she's actually a Western academic neuroscientist who experienced an entire stroke hemorrhage of the left hemisphere of the brain. And so she's here to tell you what that experience was. And that's where I like to begin the subject of yoga. So, the left hemisphere of the brain is where we are primarily seated in humanity. I'm going to call it an egoic construct, identification of self as separate, the personality construct, right? And then in the right, I should tell you, but just to really delineate what's happening here, if I may, in the time that I have. In the left hemisphere of the brain, the egoic construct, that's where judgment, separateness resides. It's analytical, scrutinous, it abides by a timeline. The ego resides in the past, it accumulates history, it skips over the present and projects it into the future with some expectation informing the field of what will be. So we're manifesting by default. We don't even know what we've agreed to, except we do in this course. So the right hemisphere is our connection to our divinity. And in divinity, there is no spoken language. There's no requirement that a letter plus a letter plus a letter makes a word, and a word plus a word plus a word makes a sentence, sentence plus a sentence makes a paragraph, makes a page, makes a chapter, makes a book. There's none of that. Have you ever heard of downloading? You just, right? Truth is remembered, truth is recognized. A picture says 1,000 words. It's our artistic, right? Creative energy is divine energy. It's artistic divine self. So we've got this egoic construct and we've got our divinity. And the egoic construct, by the way, is obviously important, useful, and helpful, except it's also what goes wrong. It's how we got into this situation, kind of like globally, right? So that's what I really want to deconstruct through the teachings. Let me just make sure I'm saying everything I wanted to. Accountability. So remember, I just said to you that most of spirituality is a combination of accountability and letting go. So, and one more resource I want to bring in is I started to talk to you about yoga. I said Jill Bolte Taylor leads to my conversation about yoga, where there's this egoic construct, and then our connection to our divinity. And now if we remember and realize and recognize the teachings of Ernest Holmes, by the way, who knows that we are vibrational beings in a vibrational plane. And I want to tell you that every single thing that presents as this form is rooted in a causal field of identification, egoic construct, our thoughts and beliefs, who we think we are. That is a lot to unpack. Who we think we are, overlaid with our precognitive agreement, what we've chosen to learn through, mired, if you will, with limiting beliefs and agreements made in fear. And not just individually, but collectively, globally, as a human species. So, we're deconstructing constructs of identification of self as separate, recognizing limiting beliefs, agreements made in fear, and by the way, most importantly, what I'm going to call collective agreements. So, yes, I set sail on my spiritual path with a lot of questions, and some questions were personal and specific to me, and some questions were deeply impersonal and relevant to the whole of humanity. And I'm going to say that each step I took, I gathered information, but the more information I gathered, the more questions there were, and then I found the teaching of the guides. That's who I would say is my current teacher, the guides. Now, the guides, I can't mention them without mentioning Paul Selig. So is anyone familiar? Is anyone familiar with Paul Selig? So thank you for letting me introduce you. Paul Selig was a professor on faculty at New York University. What is the theater school called in NYU? Do you remember?
Tisch.
So, and then there's another, Goddard's College. So Paul Selig was tenured professor at Goddard College when he had his, what he calls his awakening. And by the way, he led a small study group in his living room, just exactly like this, in his living room for years and years, had this huge shift and became a channel of the guides. They call themselves Melchizedek, but Melchizedek not being the individual figure in the Bible, Melchizedek being a body of wisdom. Sometimes they say there are 9 of us here today. And through all the other kind of spiritual study, self-study, I've come to identify, I bet the masters of the Far East are the guides. I'll bet Buckminster Fuller and Ernest Holmes are chiming in on that one. Like, it's all like these guides are just ascended beings who are fully self-realized, who just came to their Christed state through their life by deconstructing the ego, by like untangling that causal field and coming into state of enlightenment in form on earth, right? And those guides are guiding us. Now, I want to tell you that when I said to you, this is not just a book club, because there are book clubs, there are study groups of the guides. By the way, go to paulselig.com, right? And there's free content there, the books, everything, recordings. You actually can do that, but we're actually here to support you. I call it on every level of being in deeper ways. Us offering this course to this community and our online community is a really personal invitation for, it's a request for you to let us support you in really personal ways of the details of the life, what this means, how it presents. We're just gonna help you take, a step at a time on the path, something like that. Since I said to you, causal, who we are at the core of our being, what presents as form is actually thought identification, who we think we are with all the other things piled on, but then we have this other aspect of being, and that's called the astral field, and it's the feelings and emotions, by the way, which are always in response to our thoughts and beliefs. And then the body is the reconciliation of the two. And that's another conversation. So any and every presentation of disease, injury, illness, diagnosis, even what in yoga we call habitual tone, even injuries and accidents can be an indication as to where your spiritual work lies in your life. It's kind of the reconciliation of the conversation between the causal and the astral, and it shows up in the physical, right? So that's where like yoga comes in, and I'm going to go ahead and say that is certainly my jam. All right, so how the course is structured and what is required. I have 5 minutes left. I'm doing so good. I'm notoriously in pure time presence. If you know what that means, other people call that like going late. So, this is not a book that was authored by Paul Selig. This is a channel text. There are 11 books that are channel texts. And by the way, the words are only there to support the vibration. These books are vibrationally encoded, and that is just absolutely, positively no joke. So, Spencer and I have agreed, Karen, that when we have a minimum of 5 members from this community that care to commit to this course, we'll be here. As soon as you get 5 people signed up, it starts. That's when it starts, when you have 5. And when you have 5, we will come here. It'll also be online. It will be recorded. And you will need this as, I want to say required reading, but that's not really true. You can come if you don't have the book, and but we'd like you here. The way that we typically conduct this course is that we share in the reading. We each read a couple of pages. Reading is not pressure. Reading out loud is not pressure. Reading out loud is cohesive. It's extraordinary. And if you choose not to, we honor that as well. But what we'll do each time is read for 45 minutes to an hour. Somewhere in there will be a natural stopping point in the reading, and then we open it up for discussion, and that discussion is what makes this, we're not just discussing the book, we're discussing me and my life, and the circumstances specifically with this teaching, and you and your life, and your specifics, and you and your life and your specifics, and we are just nailing it down. Like, it's really great, but it's not just a good book that we read and then we put it away and then I'll see you next week. This is a call to action in your life for the accountability and for really recognizing the constructs that are what we're releasing to re-perceive from the higher purview, which is the answer to how the infinite restores harmony. It's not just affirming over something that we've judged as being terrible, travesty, trauma, wrong, bad. I'm just going to speak over it and then it'll all change, and see how that doesn't work, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about actually what this means and actually how it's our call for accountability to, of course you've heard, be the change we wish to see in the world, but in ways that you probably had not yet fathomed that we actually are accountable for. Wow. I felt it when I said it. Yeah, so do we have, my notes are written for a 2-hour talk. You've heard like we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. And that's something we're going to talk about. That thought identification on the causal plane is a self-perception that we always project upon the world and then look for evidence that their perception validates ours, and so on and so on. So there's this spiral that we're in, and we don't even see ourselves in the spiral, that we are, by the way, that we are kind of, I'll say it this way, always in our choosing, always, right now, I am in my choosing. So, yep, that's where we bring in all the other teachings. There are others. I think I've probably jotted down some of the teachings that we'd like to bring in and just reinforce, because all of you are going to be familiar with some of these, right? So that we can get on kind of the shared page, frame of reference. Jill Bolte Taylor leads to Bhagavad Gita. Of course, you know A Course in Miracles. I am a teacher of the Course in Miracles and A Course of Love. There's a lot going on there with, by the way, left hemisphere, right hemisphere, which is by definition fear and love. Law of attraction, but this is not about manifesting stuff and things by any stretch of the imagination. life and teaching of the Ascended Masters of the Far East. I even like to bring in Buckminster Fuller and Ernest Holmes, Paramahansa Yogananda, the Contemporaries' Messages from the Body. I know that you're certified in the Louise Hay teaching, right, Denise? And I'm going to go ahead and say Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, like all of the wisdom teachings, right, are relevant. Every single one of them is relevant. They all had a message to share. And I'm going to say that for me, this is the greatest of the teachings because it really unpacks it in a way that we can just see the light and understand in a way that we're ready to make the change. 20 minutes. So, yeah, we're available to come here in person Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. It'll be about an hour and a half. We ask that you have book number 1, I Am the Word by Paul Selig. You can go on the website, watch the videos to check out more. But remember, this course is all inclusive of so many teachings. This is definitely the foundation. This for me is a bit of an end-all be-all and nothing else is required. And you know, it'll take more than a year. There are 11 channel texts now and another one coming out in September. So we're in it for the long haul. As long as you're in it, we're going to support you in it. We're just going to keep it rolling, book after book after book. And all you have to do is show up with the willingness and hopefully book one. Thank you.